My best friend's drunk text was meant for her boyfriend, not me. Turns out she's been sleeping with my husband since our engagement party. We were supposed to be godparents to each other's children. The text came through at 2:37 a.m. My phone lit up on the nightstand. I grabbed it before the buzz could wake James, saw Kelsey's name, opened it expecting some drunk rambling about her night out. Instead I got, "Can't wait to feel you inside me again, baby. Tonight was so good. Love sneaking away with you. Makes it hotter knowing she has no idea." My stomach dropped. My hands went numb. I read it 3 more times, each time hoping I'd misunderstood. Each time the words stayed the same. She'd send it to me instead of whoever she was sleeping with. Some guy she was cheating on her boyfriend Trevor with, apparently. I was about to text back asking what the hell when another message came through. "Oh my God, wrong person. Delete that. Please delete. I'm so drunk. That wasn't for you." My mind started racing backward through the evening. Dinner had been normal. The 4 of us at our usual Italian place. We talked about Lily's preschool registration, about Trevor's promotion at work, about the vacation home Kelsey's parents were buying in Vermont. Normal conversation. Comfortable. We'd been doing these dinners every week for years, since before James and I got married. Kelsey had barely drunk anything, half a glass of wine maybe, said she had a headache coming on. But now she was drunk enough to send explicit texts to the wrong person, which meant she'd gone somewhere after, done something after, with someone. The timeline wasn't adding up in ways that made my skin crawl. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. James stirred but didn't wake. I studied his face in the darkness, the face I'd woken up next to for 8 years, married to for 5, the father of my daughter. He looked peaceful, innocent. My phone buzzed again. Kelsey calling. I didn't answer. Texted back instead. "Who is he?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. "It's complicated. Can we talk in person? Please don't do anything. I'm 5 minutes away." 5 minutes away, at almost 3 a.m. She'd been close enough to get here quickly. Where had she been? My brain was making connections I didn't want it to make. We lived 20 minutes from Kelsey and Trevor's apartment, unless she hadn't been at their apartment, unless she'd been somewhere closer. I thought about the hotel 3 blocks from our house, the nice one with the bar that stayed open late. James and I had gone there for drinks on our anniversary last year. Kelsey had recommended it, said she'd been there for work events. At the time, I'd thought it was a strange recommendation. Our anniversary. Her suggesting a hotel bar. Now it felt different. Felt like she'd been marking territory, showing me where she'd been with my husband while I'd been oblivious. I started scrolling back through my text history with Kelsey, looking for signs I'd missed. Found dozens. Running late, stuck at work. On nights James had also been late. Can't make lunch, feeling sick. On days James had taken half days. Going out of town for a work thing during the same weeks James had traveled for conferences. They'd been coordinating. Right in front of me. I'd been helping them, covering for them without knowing it. I didn't respond, couldn't process. She was cheating on Trevor. That's what this was. My best friend since college was having an affair and had accidentally told me. I should have felt angry on Trevor's behalf. Should have been planning to confront her about betraying him. Instead, my brain was stuck on one phrase. Makes it hotter knowing she has no idea. She, not he. The person being betrayed wasn't Trevor, was a woman. And Kelsey had specifically said don't tell James, not don't tell Trevor, don't tell James, my husband. I felt cold. The bathroom tile was freezing under my bare feet. I looked at myself in the mirror, tried to make sense of what I was thinking. Kelsey and James. No, that was insane. They barely tolerated each other. Always had. Since we'd all met. She thought he was boring. He thought she was dramatic. They'd never been alone together by choice. Except they'd both left Thanksgiving early last month. Said they had food poisoning. Except James had been working late a lot. Except Kelsey had been unavailable for our usual lunch dates. Said work was crazy. Except she'd lost weight recently. Was wearing new perfume. Was glowing in that way people glow when they're having good sex. I'd asked if she and Trevor were doing better. She'd smiled and said something was definitely better. I'd thought she meant therapy. They'd been doing couples therapy. Or that's what she'd told me. My phone buzzed. Kelsey calling. I didn't answer. Texted back instead. "Who is he?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "It's complicated. Can we talk in person?" "Please don't do anything. I'm 5 minutes away." I went back to the bedroom, looked at James sleeping. My husband of 5 years, together for 8. We'd met at Kelsey's birthday party. She'd introduced us, said we'd be perfect together, pushed us together all night. I thought she was being a good friend, playing matchmaker. What if she'd been setting something up? What if this had been planned from the start? No, that was paranoid. Insane. I was jumping to conclusions based on a drunk text that could mean anything. Except it couldn't mean anything. It meant exactly what I thought it meant. I knew. The way you know things in your gut before your brain catches up. Kelsey was sleeping with James. My best friend was fucking my husband. Had been since our engagement party. 5 years. 5 years of lies. I got dressed. Quiet. James didn't wake. I grabbed my keys, my phone, walked out to my car, sat in the driveway. Kelsey's car pulled up 3 minutes later. She got out, walked over, Looked sober now, scared. She got in the passenger seat. We sat in silence. Finally, she said it wasn't what I thought. I asked what I thought. She didn't answer. I asked who she'd been texting. She said it didn't matter. I said it mattered to me. She started crying. Said she'd made a mistake, that she'd been drunk, that the text wasn't about anyone I knew. I asked if it was about James. She went pale, asked why I would think that. I said process of elimination. She was cheating on Trevor. The person she was cheating with was someone who made it hotter that she didn't know. The only she in Kelsey's life who mattered was me, and she'd specifically told me not to tell James. Kelsey put her face in her hands, started sobbing. I watched her cry and felt nothing. No sympathy, no friendship, just cold clarity. This woman had been my best friend for 15 years. We'd met freshman year of college, roommates assigned by chance, had become inseparable. She'd been my maid of honor. I'd been hers at the commitment ceremony with Trevor 3 years ago. We'd planned to have kids at the same time, raise them together, be godmothers. The families were intertwined, our parents were friends, our siblings knew each other, holidays together, vacations together. She was supposed to be my person, the one I trusted with everything, and she'd been fucking my husband, for years, while smiling in my face, while holding my daughter, while giving me advice about my marriage. The betrayal was so massive I couldn't process it. Could only sit there in the cold car watching her cry and feeling absolutely nothing. She said it had just happened once. I asked when. She said my engagement party, 5 years ago. I laughed. Actual laugh. Said, try again. The text said, tonight was so good and can't wait to feel you inside me again. That wasn't once. That was ongoing, regular. She said, okay, twice. I said, keep going. She couldn't, just cried. I told her to get out of my car. She grabbed my arm, said she loved me, that I was her best friend, that she never meant to hurt me. I pulled my arm away, asked how long. She said she couldn't tell me. I said she owed me that much. She looked at me, mascara running down her face, said 3 years. 3 years of regular sex with my husband, not 5 years, 3 years. I asked what happened at the engagement party. She said they'd hooked up, once, in the coat room, both drunk, both regretted it immediately, had avoided each other for 2 years. Then they'd run into each other at a conference, both there for work, different hotels but same city, had drinks, talked about the guilt. One thing led to another. They'd been meeting up regularly ever since. I asked how regularly. She said once a week, sometimes twice, usually Fridays, sometimes Wednesdays. I thought about my Fridays, coming home to an empty house, James texting that he was stuck at work. I'd make dinner, put Lily to bed alone, wait up for him. He'd come home around 11, shower immediately, say he'd been at the gym after work, needed to unwind. I'd believed him, every time, for 3 years, 150 Fridays approximately, 150 times he'd chosen her over us. 150 lies. Kelsey was still talking, saying they'd tried to stop, that it was wrong, that they both knew it, but they couldn't stay away from each other. She said James loved me, that he'd never leave me, that this was just physical, just release, that it didn't mean anything. I told her if it didn't mean anything, she wouldn't have done it 150 times. She didn't have an answer for that. I asked if they'd been together when Lily was born. Kelsey said no. Never around Lily? They had rules. I laughed again, sounded hysterical, asked what the rules were. She said they only met up when it was believable, when they could both explain their absences, business trips, late nights at work. She said they'd been careful, said nobody knew. I asked if Trevor knew. She said no, asked if I was going to tell him. I said I was going to tell everyone. She grabbed my hand, begged me not to, said it would ruin her life. I said she'd already ruined mine. She said James loved me, that he'd never leave me, that this was just physical, just fun, that it didn't mean anything. I told her to get the fuck out of my car. She did. Stood in my driveway crying while I backed out and drove away. I drove to my sister's house, pounded on the door at 3:30 a.m. She answered, looking terrified. Thought something had happened to Lily. I said Lily was fine. I wasn't. She let me in. Made coffee. I told her everything. The text, the confession, 3 years, my engagement party. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked what I wanted to do. I said I didn't know. She said I should talk to a lawyer before confronting James. That I needed to protect myself and Lily. That if I confronted him without a plan, he'd have time to hide assets, to prepare, to get his story straight. I said I needed to know everything first, needed to understand the scope. She said I should hire a private investigator, document everything, build a case before moving. I said that felt calculating. She said Kelsey and James had been calculating for 3 years, that I deserved to know what I was dealing with. The sun came up. I called in sick to work. James texted asking where I was. I said emergency with my sister. He said okay, feel better. Added a heart emoji. I wanted to throw my phone. My sister called her lawyer friend. Got me a name. An investigator who specialized in infidelity cases. Her name was Ruth Sinclair, formerly NYPD, now private. I met her at 9 a.m. in a coffee shop. Showed her the text. Told her about the confession. She asked questions. How long had I been married? Did we have kids? Did James travel for work? Did he have opportunities to cheat? I answered everything. Felt numb. Ruth said she'd need a week, maybe 2, to get a full picture. She'd track James, get evidence, document patterns. I asked how much it cost. She said $5,000 up front, worth every penny if I was going to divorce. I paid. Used my personal credit card. James wouldn't see it. I went home. James was making breakfast. Lily was in her high chair, 3 years old, beautiful, dark curls like James. My smile. She saw me and reached out. I picked her up, held her tight. James asked if my sister was okay. I said yes. Family drama, nothing serious. He nodded, kissed my forehead, said he'd missed me this morning. I wanted to vomit. Wanted to scream, wanted to ask how he could do this, how he could betray me with my best friend, how he could look me in the eye every day and lie. Instead, I smiled, said I'd missed him too. He had no idea I knew. No idea his entire life was about to implode. I felt powerful, dangerous. For the first time since the text, I felt something other than pain. I felt rage, and rage was useful. The next week was performance. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner, played with Lily, had sex with James twice. Each time wondering if he was thinking about Kelsey, if he'd been with her earlier that day, if he compared us, if he laughed about me with her. I smiled through all of it. Ruth texted daily updates. She'd confirmed James was seeing Kelsey. They met at a hotel downtown, every Friday afternoon. Had been for 18 months at that location. Before that, different hotels. She had photos. James walking into the lobby, Kelsey arriving 15 minutes later, both leaving separately 2 hours later. She'd gotten room numbers, had contacted housekeeping staff, confirmed they'd been requesting the same room. Ruth had receipts, credit card statements James thought were hidden. He'd opened a separate card, used it for the hotel, for dinners with Kelsey, for gifts. He'd spent $30,000 in 3 years on the affair. Ruth's daily reports were destroying me piece by piece. Tuesday, she sent photos of James and Kelsey having lunch at a restaurant I'd never been to. They were holding hands across the table, laughing, looking at each other the way couples do, the way I'd thought James looked at me. Wednesday, she documented them at a shopping mall, Kelsey trying on clothes, James watching, giving opinions. They'd gone into a jewelry store, spent 40 minutes there. Ruth couldn't get close enough to see what they were looking at, but the implications were clear. Thursday, she followed Kelsey to a doctor's appointment, OB/GYN office. Kelsey had been in there for an hour. Ruth couldn't access medical records, but the location was damning. Was she pregnant? Was that why the text had been so urgent? So emotional? I felt sick thinking about it. About James having a baby with my best friend, while Lily asked for a sibling I'd been too scared to give her after the miscarriage. Friday, I'd stayed home from work, told my boss I had a migraine, sat in my house waiting for Ruth's call. It came at 2:03 p.m. James had left work early, claimed a client meeting, was heading downtown. Kelsey had left her office at 1:45. Same direction. They'd both checked into the hotel by 2:20. Ruth was in the lobby, had photos, timestamp proof. I looked at the photos she'd sent. James in his work suit, the blue one I'd bought him for our anniversary. Kelsey in a dress I'd helped her pick out last month. She'd said it was for a work presentation, had asked my opinion. I'd told her she looked beautiful, had meant it, had been helping her look good for my husband. The realization made me want to vomit. Every kind thing I'd done, every supportive moment, every time I'd built her up or helped her or loved her, all of it had been weaponized, used to betray me more effectively. Ruth called again at 4:35 p.m. They were leaving, separately, James first, looking relaxed, satisfied. Kelsey 10 minutes later, looking the same. Ruth had recorded video of both exits. Time stamped. Documented. She asked if I wanted her to follow James home. I said no. I knew where he was going, home to me, to play with Lily, to kiss me hello, to pretend he'd been at work all day dealing with difficult clients, to lie so smoothly I'd never question it. Ruth said she had enough evidence, that I could move forward whenever I was ready, that this case was airtight. No judge would side with James, not with this level of documentation, not with proof of systematic deception and financial fraud. She said take the weekend to decide, but don't wait too long. The longer I waited, the more time James had to hide assets or prepare a defense. I said I'd decide by Monday, hung up, sat in my empty house and cried for the first time since the text had come through. Ruth also found text messages. She'd cloned James's phone remotely. Legal gray area, but I didn't care. The messages went back 5 years, started the night of my engagement party. Kelsey had texted James at midnight, said she couldn't stop thinking about what happened in the coat room. James had responded immediately, said same, said they couldn't do it again. Kelsey had said she knew. Then they'd done it again. 3 days later, at Kelsey's apartment while Trevor was out of town, the messages were detailed, explicit, talking about positions, what they wanted to do to each other, talking about me, about how I'd never suspect, how trusting I was, how easy it was to fool me. Reading those messages broke something in me that couldn't be fixed. They'd been laughing at me, for years. while I'd been planning play dates for our future kids, while I'd been asking Kelsey for marriage advice. While I'd been loving them both, they'd been mocking me. I spent an entire night reading through 5 years of messages. There were thousands. Ruth had organized them by year, by topic. She'd flagged the worst ones for me. I read all of them anyway. Needed to know everything. Needed to understand the scope. The messages from year 1 were tentative, guilty. James would text saying they needed to stop. Kelsey would agree. Then one of them would break and reach out. They'd meet, have sex, feel terrible, promise to never do it again. That cycle lasted about 6 months. Then the guilt seemed to fade. The messages became more frequent, more detailed, more comfortable. By year 2, they were planning regular meetups, had established the Friday routine, were texting daily, good morning messages, good night messages, thinking about you messages. All the things couples do. They'd been having a relationship. Not just sex, not just an affair, an actual relationship complete with inside jokes and pet names and discussions about their feelings. One thread from 18 months ago was particularly devastating. They'd been discussing what would happen if Trevor and I found out. Kelsey had said she'd leave Trevor in a heartbeat, that she'd been planning to anyway, that she was only staying because leaving would raise questions. James had said he couldn't leave me, not yet, not while Lily was so young. Said I was a good mother and Lily needed stability. Said he'd leave eventually, when the time was right, when Lily was older, maybe when she was in elementary school. Kelsey had asked if he loved me. James had said he used to, that he'd loved who I was when we met. But that I'd become boring, predictable. That being with me was like being comfortable and dead at the same time. That being with Kelsey made him feel alive. Kelsey had responded with heart emojis, had said she felt the same about Trevor, that he was safe and reliable and completely unsexy, that she needed the passion James gave her, that she couldn't imagine life without it anymore. I'd read that exchange 5 times, each time hoping I'd misread, each time the words stayed the same. Boring, predictable, comfortable, and dead. That's how my husband saw me. That's what our marriage was to him, an obligation he'd fulfill until our daughter was old enough to handle divorce. I thought about all the times I'd asked if he was happy, if everything was okay, if he needed anything. He'd always said everything was perfect, that he loved our life, that he loved me, all lies, comfortable lies, keeping me placid while he had his real life with Kelsey, the one that made him feel alive. I wanted to scream, wanted to break everything in our house, wanted to hurt him the way he'd hurt me. Instead, I kept reading, kept documenting, kept building my case. One message stood out, from 2 years ago, after my miscarriage. I'd been devastated, lost the baby at 12 weeks. Kelsey had stayed with me for a week, held me while I cried, brought me food, told me it would be okay, that I'd have another baby, that Lily needed a sibling. 2 days after she left, I found the message. Kelsey to James. She's finally sleeping. Poor thing is wrecked. Feel terrible. Also feel terrible that watching her cry made me want you. Am I a monster? James had responded. We're both monsters. Makes it hotter. They'd fucked that night, at a hotel near my house, while I'd been grieving, while I'd been trusting my best friend to take care of me. She'd been fucking my husband and getting off on my pain. I threw up reading that. Actually threw up. My sister held my hair, said we'd destroy them both, said they deserved everything coming. Ruth found more. Kelsey had been texting Trevor too, telling him she loved him, making plans for their future. Trevor had proposed 8 months ago. Kelsey had said yes. They were planning a wedding for next summer. Had asked James and me to be in the wedding party. James was going to be a groomsman. I was going to be maid of honor. Kelsey was going to marry Trevor while sleeping with my husband, was going to stand at an altar and promise fidelity while actively cheating. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. Ruth had photos of Kelsey and Trevor too, looking happy, in love. He had no idea. Was planning a life with someone who'd been betraying him for years. I felt sorry for him, felt connected to him. 2 people who'd loved liars, who'd built lives on foundations of deception. I called Trevor, asked if we could meet, said I needed to talk to him about something important. He sounded confused, but agreed. We met at a park, neutral territory. I brought copies of everything, the messages, the photos, the hotel receipts, laid it all out on the picnic table between us, watched his face as he processed, watched him go pale, then red, then pale again. He asked if I was sure. I said Ruth had been following them for a week, had documentation of 18 months of hotel meetings, 3 years of messages, 5 years total of the affair. He put his head in his hands, said he'd thought she was happy, thought they were good, said they'd been trying to get pregnant, had been actively trying for 6 months. I felt sick. They'd been trying to have a baby while she was sleeping with James, while we were all planning to be godparents to each other's children. The level of betrayal was incomprehensible. Trevor asked what I was going to do. I said divorce, take everything I could, make sure James never saw Lily unsupervised, make sure everyone knew what they'd done. He said he was coming with me, that we should confront them together. I agreed. We planned it for that Friday, the day they met at the hotel. Ruth would call when they went in. We'd give them an hour, then show up, catch them, have witnesses, make it undeniable. Trevor said he wanted to hurt James, physically hurt him. I said that wouldn't help, that we needed to be smart, document everything, stay calm, let them destroy themselves. He agreed. But I could see the rage, recognized it, felt it myself. 5 years of lies, 5 years of our lives wasted on people who didn't deserve us. Trevor and I met twice more before Friday, once for coffee to coordinate logistics, once at his apartment to go through evidence together. He wanted to see everything I had, every photo, every message, every receipt. I showed him, watched his face as he processed. The first photo was James and Kelsey having lunch. Trevor's jaw clenched, said he recognized that restaurant. They'd gone there for Kelsey's birthday last year. She'd said she loved it, had discovered it through work, except she'd discovered it with James. Had probably been there dozens of times before taking Trevor, using their affair location for her relationship. The compartmentalization was staggering. Trevor scrolled through more photos. James and Kelsey at the hotel, at restaurants, shopping together. Each photo another nail in the coffin of our trust, our futures, our belief that we'd known these people. The messages destroyed him. I watched Trevor read through exchanges I'd already memorized, saw his face change as he understood. This wasn't casual, wasn't just sex. They'd built something, had feelings, had plans, were in love maybe, or whatever version of love was possible while betraying the people who actually trusted them. Trevor stopped at the same exchange I'd read 5 times. James saying he'd leave when Lily was older. Kelsey saying she'd leave Trevor in a heartbeat. Trevor looked up at me, asked if I thought she meant it, if she'd really been planning to leave him. I said I didn't know. Didn't know what was real anymore. He said she'd been perfect, attentive, loving. They'd just started trying for a baby 6 months ago. It had been her idea. She'd said she was ready, wanted to start their family, all while planning to leave him, all while sleeping with James. The cruelty was incomprehensible. Trevor found the message about his proposal. Kelsey texting James the morning after Trevor proposed, saying she'd said yes because saying no would have raised questions, that she'd felt terrible lying, that she'd cried during the proposal, and Trevor had thought they were happy tears. They were guilt tears, apparently. James had responded asking if she wanted him to leave me, to make it official between them. Kelsey had said no, not yet, that she needed more time, that they both needed to be strategic, to wait for the right moment, to plan their exits carefully. They'd been planning to eventually be together. This wasn't just an affair, was an escape plan, a future. Trevor threw my phone across his apartment. It hit the wall, cracked the screen. He immediately apologized, said he'd pay for it. I said it didn't matter. Screens could be replaced. Trust couldn't. He started crying, actually sobbing. This man I barely knew, who'd been at our weekly dinners for years, who I'd thought was just Kelsey's boring boyfriend. Turned out we'd both been accessories to their real relationship. Props in their performance. He and I were the same, the faithful ones, the stupid ones. The ones who'd believed in forever while our partners were planning their escape. Friday came. Ruth called at 2:15 p.m. They'd entered the hotel. Room 1407, same room as always. Trevor and I met in the hotel lobby at 3:00, took the elevator up together. Neither of us spoke. The hallway was long, beige carpet, terrible art on the walls, generic hotel smell. We got to room 1407. Trevor knocked. Once, twice, 3 times. James opened the door, wearing a hotel robe. His face when he saw us was almost worth the pain. Almost. He tried to close the door. Trevor shoved it open, pushed past him. I followed. Kelsey was on the bed, sheet wrapped around her, face white. She looked at me and started crying, said she could explain. I said I didn't want to hear it, didn't want excuses, just wanted them to know they were done. Both relationships. Both friendships. Everything. Over. The room was a mess. Clothes everywhere. 2 champagne glasses on the nightstand, empty bottle in an ice bucket, rose petals on the bed. They'd been celebrating something. I asked what the occasion was. Neither answered. I walked to the nightstand, saw a small jewelry box. Opened it. Inside was a ring. Not expensive, but pretty. Delicate gold band with a small diamond. I asked whose it was. James said nothing. Kelsey started crying harder. Trevor grabbed the box from me, looked at the ring, asked if James had just proposed. The silence was answer enough. They'd been planning to get engaged, while James was still married to me, while Kelsey was engaged to Trevor. They'd been upgrading their affair to something official. The audacity was staggering. Trevor laughed. Bitter sound. Said congratulations. Said they deserved each other. Said they'd destroyed everything for this. For a hotel room and a cheap ring and a relationship built on lies. Was it worth it? Neither of them answered. James tried to speak. Said it wasn't what it looked like. I laughed. Asked what else it could possibly look like. He said it was complicated. I said it was simple. He'd been fucking my best friend for 5 years. Since our engagement party. He'd lied every day. Stolen from our family funds to pay for hotels. Mocked me in texts. Fucked Kelsey 2 days after my miscarriage. All simple, all clear, all unforgivable. He went pale, asked how I knew about the miscarriage. I said I knew everything, had copies of every text, every photo, every receipt, had given copies to my lawyer, to Trevor, to my family. They were done. Both of them. James started crying. Actually crying. Said he loved me, that he'd made a mistake, that it had gone too far, that he wanted to fix it. I said you can't fix 5 years, can't unfuck my best friend, can't unplan a future with her, can't undo any of it. It's done. We're done. Kelsey tried to get out of bed. Sheet wrapped around her, reached for me. I stepped back, told her not to touch me. Never to touch me again. She said I had to understand that she'd never meant for this to happen, that they'd fallen in love, that it was real between them, that she'd tried to resist but couldn't. I asked if she'd tried to resist when I was grieving my miscarriage, when I'd been crying in her arms about losing a baby. She'd gone to fuck James that night, had texted him about how my pain turned her on, had used my grief as foreplay. She went white. Said she hadn't meant it that way, that the text had been taken out of context. I pulled out my phone, read the entire exchange out loud, her words, his words, the explicit details about what they'd done at the hotel while I'd been destroyed. Trevor looked sick. James looked ashamed. Kelsey looked caught. That's what this was. Not remorse, not guilt, just the fear of consequences, of being exposed, of losing control of the narrative. The divorce papers were filed Monday. I'd moved fast, had everything ready. My lawyer was a woman named Ingrid Hayes, specialized in high-conflict divorces. She said this was clear-cut. Adultery with evidence, photos, messages, witnesses. James would get destroyed in court. She was asking for full custody, supervised visitation only, all marital assets, the house, the cars, his retirement accounts. Child support at the maximum, alimony. She said judges hated cheaters, especially ones who'd been caught so thoroughly. James got the papers at work, called me immediately, crying, said we needed to talk. I said talk to my lawyer. He said he loved me, that it was a mistake, that he wanted to fix it. I said you can't fix 5 years of betrayal. You can't unfuck my best friend. Can't unlaugh at me with her. Can't undo anything. It's done. Hung up, blocked his number. James showed up at the house that night. I'd changed the locks. He pounded on the door, shouted through it, said I was being unreasonable, that he deserved a chance to explain, that I was keeping him from his daughter. I called the police, told them my estranged husband was violating the restraining order Ingrid had filed that afternoon. They came, removed him, gave him a warning, told him if he came back he'd be arrested. He left, texted me from his mother's house, long rambling messages about how this was all a misunderstanding, how Kelsey had manipulated him, how he'd been weak but he loved me, how our family was worth fighting for. I didn't respond. Forwarded everything to Ingrid. She said it was good, showed he was unstable, unpredictable, would help with the custody case. The next few weeks were war. James hired an expensive lawyer, tried to argue for joint custody, for equal asset division, said the affair was irrelevant to his parenting. Ingrid destroyed that argument. Presented the messages where James had discussed meeting Kelsey when he was supposed to be watching Lily, where he'd left our daughter with babysitters so he could cheat, where he'd stolen from our family funds, where he'd prioritized his affair over his responsibilities. The judge was a woman in her 60s, 3 grown daughters. She'd seen this before, seen men who thought they deserved everything while giving nothing. She granted my requests, full custody, supervised visitation once a week. James could see Lily for 2 hours on Sundays, at a supervised facility, with a court-appointed monitor. He'd have to pay for the monitor, plus child support, plus alimony, plus half the lawyer fees. Ingrid estimated he'd be paying me $70,000 a year for the next 15 years. The courtroom had been packed. My family on one side, James's family on the other. Trevor had come, sat with my family, moral support. When the judge read her decision, James's mother had started crying, saying I was being cruel, that I was keeping her from her granddaughter. The judge had silenced her, said James had made his choices, had prioritized an affair over his family, had stolen from his wife, had lied for years. That supervised visitation was generous considering the circumstances, that some men lost all access to their children after such betrayal. James should be grateful he'd see Lily at all. James's father had pulled his wife out of the courtroom, both of them glaring at me like I was the villain, like I'd been the one fucking someone else for 5 years. The delusion was remarkable. Kelsey's life imploded too. Trevor had told everyone, her family, her work, our mutual friends. She'd been ostracized, lost friends who'd been in her life for decades. Her mother had called her a disgrace. Her father had said he didn't have a daughter anymore. She'd been demoted at work. Hostile environment created by her own choices. She'd texted me once, long, rambling apology, said she'd been in love with James since we met, that she'd tried to stop but couldn't, that the engagement party had been one drunken mistake that turned into more, that she'd never meant for it to last this long, that she'd thought she could have both, her life with Trevor and her secret with James, said she'd been selfish, said she'd destroyed everything good in her life, Said she understood if I never forgave her. I didn't respond. Deleted the message. Deleted her number. Deleted every photo of us together. Erased 15 years of friendship like it had never existed. Because it hadn't. The friendship had been one-sided. I'd loved her. She'd used me. Big difference. The fallout spread wider than I'd expected. Our college friends picked sides. Most chose me. The ones who'd been at our wedding, who'd watched us build our life, who'd held Lily as a baby. They cut Kelsey off completely, changed group chat names, uninvited her from reunions, made it clear she'd violated something fundamental: friendship, trust, basic human decency. But a few defended her, said relationships were complicated, that we didn't know what had been happening in her heart, that judging her was unfair. Those people got cut off too. I had no patience for Switzerland, no room for people who thought betrayal could be justified. You were either appalled by what she'd done, or you were capable of doing it yourself. No middle ground. Kelsey's work situation deteriorated quickly. She was a marketing director at a mid-size firm, had been there for 8 years, well-respected, on track for VP. Then everyone found out about the affair. Her assistant quit, said she couldn't work for someone with such poor character judgment. 3 people on her team requested transfers, didn't want to be associated with her. The HR department got complaints, not about her work, about her presence. People said they felt uncomfortable, that her behavior showed lack of integrity, that it created questions about her decision-making. Her boss had called her in, asked if the rumors were true. She'd admitted everything. He'd asked if she understood how this affected the company. She represented their brand. Her personal choices reflected on them. He'd offered her 2 options: resign with a severance package, or accept a demotion to senior analyst. Different department. No direct reports. Significant pay cut. She'd taken the demotion. Needed the income. Trevor had kicked her out. She was living alone, paying rent she couldn't afford, drowning in consequences. Trevor's revenge was more public than mine. He'd posted on social media, not details, just enough. Said his engagement was off, that he'd discovered his fiancée had been having an affair for years, that he was devastated but moving forward, that he deserved better. Comments had poured in. Support, sympathy, questions about who the woman was. Trevor hadn't named Kelsey, hadn't needed to. Mutual friends figured it out. Started commenting, expressing shock, offering support. Kelsey's social media had been bombarded. People she barely knew weighing in, calling her a cheater, a homewrecker, trash. She'd deleted all her accounts, went dark online, but the damage was done. Screenshots had been shared. Her name was searchable. Future employers would find it. Future dates would Google her. The digital scarlet letter was permanent. James moved in with Kelsey. They'd been forced together by circumstances. Both single now. Both hated. Both broke from legal fees. They'd wanted each other so badly. Now they had each other. No more sneaking around, no more hotel rooms, just each other every day, in a small apartment, with no money, no friends, no respect. I heard through mutual acquaintances it wasn't going well, that they fought constantly, that James resented Kelsey for the text that started everything, that Kelsey resented James for not leaving me sooner, that they'd realized the affair had been fun because it was forbidden. Without that element, it was just 2 selfish people who'd destroyed their lives for mediocre sex. They'd broken up 3 times in 2 months. Got back together each time, because they had nothing else. Nobody else. They'd made their choices. Now they lived with them. My sister had stayed in touch with one of Kelsey's former co-workers, woman named Priya who'd been friendly with both of us. Priya fed my sister updates. Nothing malicious, just facts. Kelsey had been apartment hunting, needed something cheaper. Her lease was up and she couldn't afford renewal. James had been looking for a second job. The child support and alimony were crushing him. His career had stalled. Word had gotten around his office. Affair with his wife's best friend. 5 years of deception. The partners at his firm didn't promote men like that. Didn't trust them with client relationships. With responsibility. He'd been passed over twice for positions he'd been promised. Was stuck at his current level. Would be for years. Kelsey had applied for jobs at other companies. 3 interviews. 3 rejections. The background checks turned up the social media posts. The public nature of her affair. Companies didn't want the liability. The potential drama. She was unemployable at her level. Stuck at the analyst job making $40,000 less than before. Priya said they'd been seen arguing in public. At a grocery store. At a restaurant. Once in the parking lot of their apartment complex. Screaming at each other. Kelsey crying. James storming off. Then back together the next day. The cycle was predictable. Toxic. They'd built their relationship on secrecy and excitement. On the thrill of getting away with something. Without that framework, they had nothing. Just 2 people who'd destroyed their lives and were angry about it. Angry at each other. At themselves. At Trevor and me for exposing them. For not quietly accepting our roles as the betrayed parties. For fighting back. For winning. They'd expected forgiveness, maybe. Or at least quiet resignation. Instead, they'd gotten war. Had been forced to face consequences. Had lost everything they'd taken for granted. Their comfort. Their security. Their reputations. All gone. Sacrificed for a relationship that turned out to be unsustainable in daylight. The last I'd heard, they were planning to move. Different city, fresh start. Somewhere nobody knew them. Somewhere they could pretend to be normal people instead of home wreckers. James had been applying to firms in other states. Kelsey had been looking at remote positions. They'd been talking about leaving together, starting over, building something real this time. I'd laughed when my sister told me, asked what they thought would be different. They'd still be the same people who'd chosen deception, who'd prioritized their own pleasure over everyone else's well-being, who'd laughed at the people who'd loved them. Geography wouldn't fix that. Couldn't make them trustworthy. Couldn't erase what they'd done, what they were. They'd carry their choices everywhere, would be reminded every time they looked at each other, every time they remembered what they'd sacrificed, what they'd lost, who they'd hurt. The past wasn't escapable, was embedded in every moment of their present. My life was smaller, but better. I had full custody of Lily, had the house, had financial security, had my family, had rebuilt friendships with people who actually cared about me, started dating someone I'd met through work. Someone who knew my whole story up front, who thought I deserved better, who treated Lily like she was precious, which she was. We took it slow, no rush, no assumptions, just present moment, seeing where things went. It felt healthy, honest, everything my marriage hadn't been. I'd thought James and I were good, thought we'd been happy. Turned out I'd been happy alone. He'd been happy elsewhere. The difference mattered. His name was Daniel. He worked in my company's IT department. We'd known each other casually for years. Said hi in the hallway, small talk at company events. After the divorce became public, he'd sent me an email, simple message. Said he was sorry for what I was going through, that his sister had gone through something similar, that if I ever needed to talk to someone who understood, he was available. No pressure. No expectations, just an offer of support. I'd appreciated it, had taken him up on it 2 months later. We'd met for coffee, talked for 3 hours. He'd been divorced too, different circumstances. His ex-wife had left him for her female best friend. They'd been married 4 years, together 6. He'd had no idea she was unhappy, thought they were building something. Came home one day to an empty house and a note. She'd moved in with the friend, filed for divorce the next week. He understood betrayal, understood having your reality shattered. We'd bonded over shared trauma, strange foundation, but solid. 6 months in, Daniel met Lily. I'd been nervous. Hadn't introduced her to anyone. Hadn't wanted to confuse her or bring people into her life who might leave. But Daniel had been patient, understanding, had suggested a casual meeting. Playground, ice cream after, low pressure. Lily had loved him immediately. He'd pushed her on the swings, made her laugh, treated her like a whole person, not just a kid to tolerate. When she'd fallen and scraped her knee, he'd been calm, comforting, got the first aid kit from his car, made it into a game, gave her a ridiculous Band-Aid with dinosaurs. She'd stopped crying, started asking about the dinosaurs. He'd made up an elaborate story about how they were brave dinosaurs who helped kids feel better. She'd been enchanted. On the drive home, she'd asked when we could see Daniel again. I'd said soon. She'd said good. He was nice. That was the highest praise from a 3-year-old. He was nice, simple, true. Lily adjusted better than expected to the divorce. She was young enough not to fully understand. Just knew Daddy lived somewhere else now. Saw him on Sundays. For 2 hours. With a nice lady watching. She didn't seem upset, actually seemed happier. Kids sensed tension. She'd been living in a house full of lies. Now she lived in peace. That mattered more than having both parents under one roof. My therapist said that was the right perspective. That intact families weren't always healthy families. That sometimes breaking was healing. I believed her. Was learning to trust again. Learning to believe people. Slowly, carefully, with lots of verification. Maybe too much. But I'd been burned. Was allowed to be cautious. The supervised visits were awkward for everyone. The facility was sterile, white walls, uncomfortable furniture, toys that looked sanitized, a monitor named Patricia who took notes on everything. James would arrive looking defeated, dressed nice, trying to make an impression. Lily would run to him initially, hug him, he'd light up. Then the reality would set in. 2 hours, under observation, structured activities, no privacy, no normalcy. Patricia watching every interaction, writing things down. James would try to play, build blocks, read stories, but you could see the strain, the awareness that this was all he got. 2 hours a week of monitored fatherhood. Sometimes Lily would ask to leave early, wanted to go home, wanted her actual life. James would look crushed. Patricia would note it. Time cut short. Visit ending early. Another mark against him in the court's ongoing evaluation of his fitness as a father. The first Sunday James brought Kelsey to his supervised visit was 6 months after the divorce. They'd arrived together. The monitor had called me. Said Kelsey wasn't allowed in the facility. I'd been clear about that in the court order. No contact between Kelsey and Lily, ever. James had argued. Said Kelsey was his girlfriend. They were together. She should be allowed to meet his daughter. The monitor had said no. Court order was clear. James could comply or forfeit his visit. He'd chosen to forfeit, had left with Kelsey, had chosen her over Lily. Again. When I'd picked Lily up, she'd asked where Daddy was. I'd said he couldn't make it today. She'd shrugged, asked for ice cream. We'd gotten ice cream. She'd been fine. Hadn't mentioned him again for 3 days. His importance in her life was fading. He was doing that himself. Every choice. Every priority. Every time he chose Kelsey over his daughter, he was making himself irrelevant. A year after the divorce, I saw them at a grocery store, James and Kelsey, looking tired, older. They were arguing in the cereal aisle. Something about money, about bills, about whose fault everything was. They didn't see me. I watched for a minute, saw what they'd become. 2 people trapped in consequences, living in the wreckage of their choices. They'd wanted each other so desperately, had been willing to destroy everything. Now they had each other and nothing else. The affair had been exciting when it was secret, when it was stolen moments and forbidden passion. Now it was just daily life. Grocery shopping and bill paying and all the mundane reality they'd been escaping when they'd been sneaking around. The fantasy had died. Reality had killed it. They were stuck with each other and the weight of what they'd done. I stood behind a display of crackers and watched them. Really watched. Tried to see what James had found so irresistible. What had been worth destroying our marriage, our family, his relationship with his daughter. Kelsey looked ordinary, tired. Her hair needed washing, no makeup, wearing sweatpants and a stained t-shirt. The woman who'd been so carefully put together at our dinners, who'd always looked perfect, who'd glowed with the excitement of her secret life. That woman was gone. This was what remained. James looked worse. He'd gained weight. His clothes didn't fit right. He had the energy of someone defeated, someone who'd made a catastrophic choice and was living with it. They'd both aged years in 12 months. The stress, the shame, the financial pressure, the isolation, all of it was written on their faces. They'd destroyed their lives for passion, for excitement, for feeling alive. Now they looked more dead than I'd ever been. The irony wasn't lost on me. Kelsey grabbed a box of the expensive cereal. James took it from her, put it back, grabbed the store brand. She argued. He said they couldn't afford it. She said she was tired of not having anything she wanted. He said whose fault was that? She'd sent the text. She'd destroyed everything. She'd been careless, drunk, stupid. She said he'd been the one who'd started it, who'd kissed her at the engagement party, who'd pursued her for 2 years until she gave in, who'd told her he loved her, promised they'd be together eventually. He said he'd never promised that. She said liar. He said she'd always been delusional, reading into things, creating a fantasy. She started crying. Right there in the cereal aisle, said she'd given up everything for him, her career, her relationship with Trevor, her family, her friends, for him. And this was what she got. Poverty, a studio apartment, a man who resented her. He said she'd gotten exactly what she deserved. They both had. This was consequences. This was reality. This was the life they'd chosen. She slapped him, hard, across the face. The sound echoed. People turned, stared. James's face went red. Not from the hit, from embarrassment, from being seen. They rushed away, left the cart, left the store, left their dignity somewhere between the produce and the frozen foods. I left before they saw me. Didn't want to engage, didn't need to. They weren't my problem anymore, weren't my friends, weren't my family. They were strangers who'd borrowed my trust and broken it. I'd taken it back, built something new, something real, something mine. Lily asked who those people were. I said nobody important. She accepted that. We finished our shopping, bought the good cereal, the one we liked, could afford, drove home, to our house, our life, our future, the one I was building from scratch, without lies, without betrayal, without people who didn't deserve us. That night, I lay in bed thinking about the grocery store, about James and Kelsey's public meltdown, about how far they'd fallen. Part of me felt vindicated. They'd destroyed their lives for each other, and now they were destroying each other. Poetic justice, natural consequences. Everything I'd wanted in my darkest moments after discovering the affair. But mostly I felt nothing. They were irrelevant. Their misery didn't make me happy. Didn't heal anything. Didn't undo the years of deception. They'd chosen their path. I'd chosen mine. We were all living with our choices. The difference was, I could look at myself in the mirror, could be proud of how I'd handled things, could know I'd been honest, faithful, true. They'd have to live with knowing they'd been none of those things, that they'd destroyed good people for bad reasons, that they'd traded real love for fake passion, that they'd lost everything that mattered for nothing that lasted. That burden was theirs. I didn't need to add to it, didn't need to wish them more misery. They were creating plenty on their own. It was smaller than what I'd planned, different than what I'd expected. But it was true, and truth mattered more than anything, more than history, more than comfort, more than the illusion of friendship or love. The drunk text had destroyed everything I'd thought was real, but it had also revealed what was true, and in the end, that was a gift, a terrible, painful, necessary gift that had cost me everything and given me myself back. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.